It's so easy to become a slave to our patterns and our habits of living. And once we find that groove that makes life easy, we follow into it and excel at keeping that space supported. And this can be things like starting the day with a caffeinated beverage to wake us up, signing up for an exercise class, getting started with it, but not really loving it, and eventually not finishing it. But you buy a new membership because you hope that that pattern's going to stick. Perhaps you're walking every morning the same route with the same pace and challenges. And it may seem that I'm dishing your favorite wellness habit at the moment, but bear with me. We all have good intentions. My guest today, Michelle Abraham, knows all about patterns and behaviors as she's built a very successful award-winning business in the podcast industry called Amplifyou. It's North America's top podcast management company. I was interested when I was reading that thinking you're a Canadian. And it's lovely that it's in the North America's top podcast listing. She started as a podcaster herself, then branched out to help launch over 100 podcasts to help more people get their message out. So what does this have to do with habits for wellness? Michelle's podcast business has won Entrepreneur of the Year in 2022 and supports podcasters in the wellness industry. She knows about patterns and behaviors as she's heard their messages, and she's also understood their own patterns. She has a way of taking those patterns and bringing intention in for success with their podcasts, and this has realized the right program to make them successful on a grander scale. Our story doesn't stop here, however, because Michelle has also realized there's more to the story for healers and has ventured beyond her initial podcast focus into high vibe visionaries. She's changed her own patterns and habits to realize more of what she's truly made of. And transformation requires grit, intuition, passion, and of course, the hard one for many of us, letting go. Get ready to learn some incredible ideas from a true inspiration. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And please welcome Michelle Abraham.
Oh my gosh, Michelle times 2 today. Thank you, Michelle, for that introduction. That was awesome.
Oh, it's lovely to have a few moments of your time and to be able to really spend some time learning more about you and what really inspires you. And when I first met you, your energy just really picked me right up, and it was like, okay, here's somebody who I really want to make sure I connect with. And as you're going about doing what you're doing, I'm enjoying watching the inspiration that you're sharing with others. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. That's awesome. Likewise, I was super excited to connect with you as well. I think what you're up to is fabulous. And I love the way you put this podcast together. It is so cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So let's dive into how I put the podcast together, because I always set it up for the listeners. So if it's the first time for you listening, I want you to know that this podcast is designed so that by the end you have a balance and you can feel like you've been rejuvenated as you carry on with your day. And that's even if you're sitting in your car listening as you're driving. We always start with an affirmation, and I'm pulling a card from my card deck called the Affirmations for the Body and Biofield. So I always hold it up so people can see the image on the front. If you're listening to the podcast, it is a ribbon of color, and it's called Baby and Child. So how we nurture ourselves and how we nurture others in what we're doing. So I always like to draw attention to that. And I have pulled the card. I'm going to just hold it up. It looks kind of robotic. It's got green at the top, and it's got orange, some browns, some creams in it. And it looks almost like it could be some kind of a superhero for those people that maybe have those kind of dolls. But this is from the Fashion Matrix Connection. So this is how energy transforms through the body. So how we're communicating all the way through the systems. So look around you and be aware of all that your senses are providing you. Engagement on all levels creates a new awareness for action. Everything engages when spiraled into action. So, and this one is for the belt channel. So that belt channel is around the belly button, really. It's around the center of the body, and it's when we spiral, the energy starts to flow through all the systems as they talk to each other. Sometimes we just move straight forward. That's where I was talking about walking. Sometimes that straightforward doesn't get that belt channel actually engaged. And I would actually not start with a movement, but I wanted to because of your conversation today and where I think you're going to pull people to go. So what I would invite people to do, unless you're driving in your car listening, is to take one hand on the front of the body and just put it across on your waist towards your hip. And the other hand's going to go on the back side of the body. And as you put your hands there, I just want you to unwind. So you're just going to pull across the middle of the body and just pull across and pull across until your hands change places. Okay, and then we're just going to do it again. So you go back to the original position, pull across, and twist. And this gives us the option of spiraling one way, which is going to be how the energy goes through the body. And then I'm just going to get you to change the way your hands are. So whatever that first hand did going across, put the other hand across the front, and then we'll spiral the other way. And a lot of times when we have trouble thinking of new ideas or trying to come up with solutions, we just need a little bit of inspiration sideways to get us there. Okay.
I love that. Very cool. And that really like almost awakens like our just one of our chakras there that really is all about our identity too, which is interesting. If I can feel that awakening and kind of movement in there. It's so cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so let's add the second part, which I always start with a cup of tea. And I know people think, yep, that's because I've got the tea company. It is, but also it's about actually what's in our tea and how we sip it as a ritual. And so I like to bring that in. So do you want to share what you've got there with you today while you're on your travels?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm in a hotel room this morning in Phoenix, and I will be going off to Puerto Rico for our Raise Your Vibe retreat in a couple of weeks. So I'm holding up my Puerto Vallarta multicolored cup, which has some coffee in it this morning.
Awesome. And it's rainbow colors. So for people that are listening, she's got purple, green, white, and it's all swirling around it, which is lovely, pulling in all the chakra colors. So
it almost looks like the card, actually, the colors on the card that you had there.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, actually, with the greens and the blues. All right. And what I picked today, I was trying to decide how to do this, and Beach Bonfire came up. I put it into a teacup. This is my friendship cup. So someone passed it to me who supported me for a very long time. Because she had the opportunity to volunteer for me. And so I love to be able to share this with other friends. But the Beach Bonfire, I want to draw attention to the fact, a couple of the ingredients. So it's a black tea with cacao, sea kelp, caramel, and Queen Anne's lace.
Ooh, what an interesting mix.
So, and I don't know, do you have Queen Anne's lace on the West Coast?
I don't think so. I've never heard of it.
Okay, so here it grows like in the ditches everywhere, in the fields.
Okay.
And it usually most of the summer and even into the fall we have it. But I wanted to share with people because this just tuned in, and I didn't know this until I was researching which tea for today. Queen Anne's lace supports amplifying or activating the seer ability. So it grounds and balances living between realms and provides support for using intuition and rational thinking. And as we're guided or inspired to follow our dreams, this special tea blend brings about support and ambition to break habits and patterns to be more than just being.
So a perfect tea.
that's what I thought. And I thought when you start to tell your story today, I thought this is the way that I hope people will be inspired, and we've brought it to the table today. So cheers and thank you for sharing today.
Cheers. I wish the hotel had some lovely tea like that.
Yeah, if it was like here, then it would be orange pico.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so Michelle, let's dive in. I know on previous podcasts that you've done, you've shared how you developed Amplifyou. And for those people that may not know that story, do you want to start there and then talk about how you've taken it from there?
Sure. So when I became a new mom, I was really kind of at a loss because interestingly enough, I spent 10 years in the fitness industry and I had my own fitness studio and boot camps and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, I was teaching a spin class 9 hours before I gave birth. So when I became a new mom, that slowing down was a new thing for me. And, I found myself a little bit in a funk, lack of sleep and lack of motivation. And so I wanted to feel that inspiration and motivation again. So I heard of these things called podcasts. So I tuned in and started listening as a listener. And I got so inspired by this one podcast. It was called The Eventual Millionaire. And it was more the stories of people who had this idea and they took this idea into a product or into a service or into a lifestyle brand. And it was really interesting hearing their story from idea to fruition. So I listened to like every episode this show had, and I became an avid listener. And I would put my son in a stroller and put my earbuds in and get my walk in. And all of a sudden, over time, I noticed how much more my just spirit felt lifted and I felt inspired again. And I kind of got out of that little bit of postpartum depression, and just felt a renewed sense of like motivation in life. And so I had contribute that to podcasts. So I really dove down the rabbit hole of podcasts deeply and fell in love with the whole idea of someone sharing their message and the impact it can have on the listeners' lives. And in that short few months that I was listening to those few podcasts, my life transformed. So I thought, well, hey, this is such a cool vehicle for people. Why don't many people know about it? When I say to my mom friends, hey, what podcasts do you guys listen to? They looked at me with crazy eyes, like, what are you talking about? What is a podcast? And so now fast forward, 11 years later, everyone knows what a podcast is, which is awesome. And there's so many people out there sharing their stories. And so Amplifyou is a company that was born to help people get their voices out there in the world. And we do a lot of work with helping them with the courage to share their voice, overcoming a lot of fears, and then putting their message out there in the world, and with the hopes of inspiring other people who hear their message, just like you do with your podcast, Michelle. And just it's such a cool. I think it's just such a cool industry to be able to support people doing that.
Mm-hmm. And from that process too, the way podcasts are being done, but also the way they're growing from those initial starts, they're really transforming in themselves, just even the depth of what's there. So it's no longer just the story, because there's so much more behind. And also I'm finding too the link across the world, right? Mm-hmm. It's a yes. small world. People will say, oh, you talk to so-and-so from whatever country. And it's like, yeah, in my head, I just went, yeah. But then I realized, oh, for a lot of people, they might not get out of their space where they are and have that opportunity to talk to these people that are from around the world.
A really good point. It really makes our community global. We have seven different countries represented in our podcast that we've launched at Amplifyou, and it's just so interesting to know that we have podcasts in Africa and Europe and Australia and Canada and the US and like all over the place, and they all know each other. They've gotten to become friends, and they meet. And having this relationship through Zoom, like I don't know where we'd be without Zoom in the podcast space either. It's been really helpful so that we can actually see each other like we're sitting having coffee together.
Exactly. And I think too, that thing you were talking about at the beginning about you went to that podcast to make a connection, mm-hmm. and you didn't always have somebody you could chat with, but you felt like you chatted with somebody by being on the podcast. And I think that's another place where, people who are feeling isolated can start mm-hmm. to feel like they're much more connected. It develops a different community.
Yeah, so when I was listening to that particular podcast, I felt like if I saw the host at an event, I could run up and give her a big hug like she's a good friend, as I'm sure your listeners feel the same way too, whereas you might not know those listeners, but they certainly know you. And I felt like it was like this friend in my earbuds, and you're actually in as a podcaster, you're actually in someone's ears, literally. It's a very unique space to be able to share your message.
Yeah, I just had a friend here on the weekend, and I haven't been in my dance studio for many years teaching, but she said, and she's an adult, older adult, and she said, I can still hear you in my head saying those dance steps. So when when I feel that something in the music, I can hear you telling me how to go forward with the steps.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because you don't
That's
know
so cool.
where your voice might take somebody or the words that you've said.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't necessarily. I mean, I think that's one of the actually the tricky things about podcasting is you might have a huge impact on someone's life and you might not even know that you have, which is okay. But it's also nice when you hear that you've made an impact in someone's, like when your listeners reach out and tell you that.
exactly. Okay, so now let's take you to where you were sitting in a great place because you've
Mhm.
got the company, you built it, you've been really successful, and I have to say too, for those people on the podcast that don't know, Michelle lives in a little remote spot on the west coast of Canada. I'm on the east coast, and so you did that from a remote place,
Mhm.
and now you've decided you're going to move on to something different and you're letting
Mhm.
go of that comfort area where you've been very successful. Tell me about what it was like to make that kind of decision and what you were feeling.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting. The podcast space has grown so much over the last few years, and we've been able to help over 400 people launch their show, which has been so amazing. And I always knew podcasting was the vehicle. And I knew there was more to my story than just podcasting, but podcasting was a big piece of it. And I was never intending to let go of Amplify You. It's my baby. It's still my baby. I still love it. But it was something I was having a conversation. I'd hired a coach, and she's an amazing coach, Vanessa Burrs, and we were talking about scaling and growing my business. And as we were doing that, it was the type of coach that's, we really were checking in with my sacral chakra. And does that feel right? And is that feeling aligned? And is that feeling, we were turning inwards instead of outwards at marketing and strategy. And as we were turning inwards, I was thinking that it was starting to feel like a little bit hard and a little bit like I was not quite in alignment anymore with what I was doing. And I wanted to do some other things in a different industry, in a different space. And I was a little bit resistant to that change because I was very happy with what I was doing. I wasn't not happy, but what was happening because Amplify You was growing so fast, I was spending less time with my family. I was spending more time on Zoom calls. I was not taking care of myself, my physical self, not nurturing my own health, and so that was taking a little bit of a toll on me, and I hadn't even realized because I was on this go 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 trajectory, and it wasn't until we slowed down and we really took a look at what was important to me, and what was important to me was spending time with my family, reaching more people, and also taking care of my own health. And none of those things were being achieved in the current state that I was working. So there needed to be a shift. And I was really resistant to the shift until all of a sudden it was like, that's the answer. And she said, well, what if you let go of Amplify You? I'm like, what do you mean if I let go of Amplify You? I can't. I have 19 team members. I have all these clients. I have all these things in place that I would disappoint people if I felt like I would disappoint them if I closed the business. And so she said, well, what if you don't have to close the business, but you still get to let go of it? I was like, I don't think that's going to work. I don't ever see a way out of that. There's no way. And the more we thought about it and the more I thought about it, I'm like, it does feel like the right answer. I just couldn't, I just couldn't see it happening until you were kind of going through who in our team, maybe there's someone that would want to take it over. And the first thing that came to my mind, of course, my brother has been working with us for the last like 5 years. He's amazing with the clients. He has incredible visionary skills and team management skills, and he loves that, the structures and the putting systems in place, and that is not me. And so uh, I had the inspiration to just kind of have a conversation with them and say, "Hey, is this something that you would ever want to maybe take over and this become your thing?" And the answer was yes for him. And I was a little bit like excited and surprised, and also like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?" so it's been a interesting letting go process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
think I'm still letting go.
interesting, right? Because you kind of go to the edge of the cliff, and then it's like, now what do I do? And it's so easy to be able to step back and say, I'm not going to do it. And I can say that too from putting my business up for sale once, changing my mind, and then finishing the year off, came back in after my break, took one class and said, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I won't get through the year. And realizing I had to go back and redo the whole action all over again. So that was
Yeah.
me pulling
It's like I
back
become
from the cliff.
allergic to being busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, pulling. It's like when you finally make that decision, there's no way of going back to how it was. Like I immediately became allergic to having a full calendar and a full schedule. Once I took a little bit of a break from it to think about things, there's no way I could go back to how it was before. And so, okay, we have to continue on this path forward because it is the right path. And it's been really great to see my brother take ownership of everything and put his inspiration and his thoughts into it and make some changes for him. The team's been really awesome in supporting him. And I have been going through a bit of an identity crisis. It's like, who am I now? What do I do now? And how do I say that in the world now when everyone knows me as this other thing or this other message that I bring to the world? So, yeah, that's been a really fun, I call it fun. I think most other people might call it terrifying when you're going from having a very comfortable business revenue to zero. But I had the full support of my husband and um, to just kind of take a little bit more time this summer to think about things and plan what I want to do and slowly start implementing it. So it wasn't a panic and it wasn't I need to jump and have this at 100K in the next 90 days. It wasn't that kind of pressure. So really helped me have the courage to make that leap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm listening to two interesting things that came out of your ability to make that decision. And one was listening to I wasn't taking care of myself. Because I don't think people sometimes realize that the reason they're not taking care of themselves is because they're not in the right place. And so the symptom of that is they don't take care of themselves. And sometimes you just beat up yourself because you didn't keep to the exercise schedule, or you didn't eat the foods the correct way, or you spent more time, going through the fast food drive-through. But if you actually take a look at what are you doing, that might actually be the answer. Not so much that you needed to spend more time at the gym necessarily, or consciously try to make those better food choices. There's something in the background playing, and people don't think of it that way sometimes.
And for me, I think I was sitting like eight hours a day on Zoom calls. The end of this 8 hours of the day, I didn't have much left for family or myself. And so that was not becoming okay with my own self, and my soul was like, that's enough. We've got to go back to a little bit more of a balance so that you can take care of yourself and also spend time with family and also have a really great business. So I think I'm probably a little bit different than most people. I absolutely love the starting over phase where I get to recreate. So this will be my fourth business. So my first business was in the fitness space, and I soon opened up a fitness studio and 8 boot camp locations licensed out across the province. And I found myself that I built myself a really nice jail, is what I call it. It was a brick and mortar. business. And so when I left that business, I sold that business and I was like, heck no, I'm never doing that again. No more brick and mortar, or no more feeling like I was in jail. So then when I had my son, my friend and another mom and I were trying to start businesses, but finding it really hard to do that when you have new babies and young children. And so we thought, how great would it be to have a co-working space with some sort of daycare attached to it. So we spent a year looking for that location, to know that it was too far of a futuristic thought for the bylaws for daycares and for cities to have those two things coexisting in the same area. And so we weren't able to create that. So we just opened a co-working space. And again, after several years of being there, like I've built myself another jail, somewhere where I have to be 24/7. I have to be in a location to be able to do my work. And I didn't like that. So when I built Amplifyou, I was very intentional building it without a location. In fact, like you mentioned, I built it from a tiny she shed in the backyard of our property, which is off the grid on the boat access side of a lake in the middle of nowhere, BC, Canada. And so I kind of use that as a funny tongue in cheek thing these days, where it's like, if I can do that from there, you can do it from anywhere. And luckily, we have the online world now where we can build a business from. It doesn't matter where you are. It's all about, the relationships that you make and the people that you meet. And so I think that having this Amplifyou business this time, I did do a lot of things right that I made mistakes of the first couple of times. And now this time, starting all over again, there's some mistakes I made with Amplifyou with not prioritizing myself and prioritizing family and prioritizing the things that matter the most to me. That's how we're going to set up this next business in a way that less overhead, less team members, more community members, and kind of using it as a collective to not all be about my time and all about me and my expertise, but using the collective expertise and the high vibe leaders, using other visionary leaders' expertise to showcase and grow and connect with each other and communicate and grow relationships and grow their businesses.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And I'm thinking about, there was a part two of what you had said previously when your brother was able to come forward to say he would take over. And what you were describing was all the things that he did that you didn't do. And I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes because we wear so many hats, we're trying always to be the best at all those pieces, but we truly do not have gifts in some areas. And what happens when you step aside for the person who has those tools, who can make your business shine even better, but you're standing in the way of that? You're successful, but you're still standing in the way. And I thought that was just really poignant. And be able to say that about your brother, right? There's a lot of siblings who couldn't be in the same room working together. But the fact that you'd be able to hand it over and acknowledge and trust what you've built, and the integrity.
It's funny because him and I have always said that no matter what happens in business, we have to sit next to each other at the family dinner table for family functions. So this is always our priority, as our relationship as brother and sister first, before business stuff gets in the way of it. And it's interesting because the more I let go of Amplifyou, the better he shines, and which is really great. I'm excited about that part of it. And I was in a consultation with him the other day. So now I get to be on the other side and like help coaching him on and consulting him on some really great things that I didn't have the skills or time to do when I was in that leadership role, which now he can start implementing.
Wow. I love it. I love it. So cool. Okay, so you're diving in and you're creating community. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of those key pieces that you think have been missing?
Sure. Yeah. So I've noticed online, especially, that some people are just, especially post COVID, I think there's been a lot of COVID kind of ripped a band-aid off of a lot of people's lives and to take a deeper look at what are we doing and why are we here. And I feel like there's a little bit of misalignment for a lot of people. And that's one thing that I want to challenge business owners, entrepreneurs out there to take a look at. Are you feeling like things are easy and fun and exciting? And if they are, great, that means you're really in alignment. And if you're not, then maybe you need to take a look at some things that are out of alignment and make some minor adjustments. So I really want to help. I call them high vibe leaders, because high vibe leaders do things differently than other leaders. So high vibe leaders live in a higher vibration so that they are surrounded by other people who are higher vibration in the positive. They're excited. They're in alignment with their business. They're in alignment with what they're doing in this world and what they're sharing. So they have this other energy that is very unique than people who are not at that higher vibration. And what's different about the way they do business is that they turn internally and see what works with them. We have a smorgasbord of marketing tactics and strategies out there, and you can choose whichever one that you want to do, but it's got to be right for you. And all of them will not work for you, but you got to pick one that will. So you got to turn internally. So my real excitement going forward is so first of all, being in alignment and having a higher vibration as a leader is number one as a community. But number two is I found a lot of people, myself included, I made the biggest mistakes doing this, was got really excited about getting out on podcasts and on stages with this message. And I had no links, broken links everywhere, not a good follow-up, not a great lead magnet, not a good CRM with email follow-ups and stuff like that. So I was not ready for that visibility in the foundation of my business. And therefore it was constantly getting more exposure, but not being ready for it and having broken things everywhere. So we are doing a Get Media Ready boot camp for people in the High Vibe Leaders community, where they're going to be ready for all that exposure and all that visibility, so then it will be easier. They'll have links out there that are always working. There will be a place for you to send your listeners to, and a community for people to find out all about you. So that's really important, is that getting ready. So we have the readiness, the resources, and then we go into our mastermind, which is all about relationships and creating partnerships and joint venture partners. So the High Vibe community's got about 6 pillars, and it's around contribution. So we all contribute to the community. And around community is another pillar. Connections, another pillar. And we have 3 other pillars that are all C words that are all really important to the collaboration of everyone in the community. So collaboration, connection, community, contribution. And then the most exciting part for me is we meet as a community online in more of an experiential way. So we help each other in these master hives. Like, hey, so today we're working on helping Michelle with her exposure. So we're going to give her a LinkedIn recommendation, everybody. So we all go and do that. So it's helping you grow your business and build those relationships that are intentional and of like-minded people. And then we have something called aligned adventures. So that means we get out from behind our computers and we do something like our retreat that we're going to in Mexico in a couple of weeks. We get to connect with each other, mastermind with each other, create some great content, and have a lot of fun and just feel like our vibe is right. So it's called Raise Your Vibe retreats. So that's what we're up to. And those things that are important to me in business is that it's fun. There's some freedom in my time, and that there's connections and collaborations and of other really cool, like-minded people that are high vibe leaders.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow. But it really does take in all of the pieces that you were already working on.
Yeah.
But allows you to shine more now in a new way. And like just thinking about your brother, this, even just when you're coaching him, some of the things that he requires from you, what you get back from him. So the areas where it wasn't your area, to be able to pull in some of that knowledge.
Exactly.
Beautiful synergies. Yeah. Wow.
It feels fun and exciting when things are in alignment.
Yeah. And that's what I find too, the time, it's funny because you go quicker, but it's like time stops when you're in that space. And that's that's when you get to have that little bit of incubation time for the mind to think about what you want to do.
That is absolutely correct. It's interesting that I had this whole High Vibe Leaders program downloaded, and I couldn't. It was my spirit team was waking me up in the middle of the night and telling me all these things, and I was like, guys, can we not like have this conversation during the day? And they're like, when in your day do you have time that's like for creativity and for space and for these messages to come through? I'm like, you got a point there. So once I did clear my schedule, like my calendar looks like a completely different person's calendar right now than it used to look. And the space and the creativity, I've just been loving having that, so much so that I am allergic now to putting more things on my calendar because it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the listeners now going, oh, it'd be so lovely to just eliminate a few things on my calendar. So I would invite people to look at what kinds of things are sitting in the calendar that don't need to be there, or how you could change that to more of a collaborative process where it isn't just you doing the actions yourself, but you now have a team that you build, or a way that you incubate some ideas. And I'm hoping that's over a cup of tea, because that's a great way to transform. And as I brought the ingredients to mind, which I don't always do that when I'm doing the podcast, but to bring the different ingredients to mind, because they're there to support, and they become an ally as well. So it's not like you need another person necessarily to make that connection get started, but you definitely need to connect, and that's important. Yeah. Okay, so where can they find you now, Michelle?
I knew you were going to ask this, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to do this again with broken links. No, this time I do have a link. You can find a little bit about our Aligned Adventures at alignedadventures.ca. So that's the best place to go. We are doing something called the Influencers Cruise in the new year. In April. And so we're going to get together with a bunch of high vibe leaders on a cruise ship and do some masterminding and some really fun business growth activities there. And you get to shine too. You get to teach something as part of a contribution. So we are doing that, and that can be found on influencerscruise.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, and I always like to put movement at the end. So if people have been sitting and listening, they get up and move, because the first piece of making change is you have to take the first step forward. So what is it that's going to happen? So do you have a movement that you like to use?
Oh, that's a great question. I really enjoy this. I actually been doing this 4-minute thing that I found online, and it's a really interesting little exercise movements. They're very small movements, and they're really short and quick, and I can do them like 4 rounds of 10 of each of them really quickly. So it's like 4 movements. The first one is like, it's just like this.
So
And
your
then
arms are going up and down?
arms are up and down. Yeah, arms are up and down, just kind of like you're going out. And then the next one is raising it up over your head, connecting your hands together, and then down, connecting your hands.
So
So
you've got
up
your hands
over.
in a fist. Is it
Yeah,
a
in a
loose?
fist.
I call them
Yeah,
butterfly fists. Is a loose
yeah,
fist?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, like a loose fist. So you clap your fists together over your head and your fists together down in front of your belly. And you do that 10 times. And then you do straight up over your head, like you're reaching up for the sky 10 times.
Cheerleading.
And
Yep.
yeah, exactly. And then you do 10 squats. And those 4 exercises, I do them probably 4 times a day now, 10 times each for 4 rounds. And it's just a really interesting way. I kind of do them in between every Zoom call. And I kind of adapted from what I found. I dislocated my shoulder a few weeks ago, and I just was trying to incorporate some movement and also less sitting down. So between Zoom calls, I'm getting up and doing those rounds of things really quickly. And I have a personal trainer, and she is her whole thing is things under a minute. And she gives me one exercise to do, and every time I go to the bathroom, I have to do that one exercise in the bathroom. Doesn't matter what it could be, like just standing on one leg. It could be a squat. It could be a lunge. But over the course of the day, you get several of those movements done. So those are the 2 things that I've been working on to get some movement back into my life.
Nice. Beautiful. And now you have the belt channel turn,
Yes, I love that one.
which is going to
That's a
link
good one.
up that energy flow that you're creating with the other ones and
Mm,
give you that spiral. So I'm just going to inspire people with that piece.
yeah,
And then what I wanted to add was, well, I want to add one piece for you because you were talking about your shoulder.
please,
And
yes.
I'm sure there's other people listening, and some people may have heard me do this before, but this comes from my Tai Chi work. And so you're just
Mm,
turning your palms up in
yeah.
front of the body, and you're just gonna, like, you're gonna offer blankets up onto a shelf. You just take your hands up towards the shelf, then turn
Mm.
the palms over, and just let them fall back down.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tricky one for
So
the
you're
shoulder.
turning to go up. Exactly. And you, 40% effort if you have an injury.
Yeah.
So you're just going to go to where there's no pain
Mhm.
and then turn it over.
Mm,
So it may be that your hands get as high as, I don't know, maybe your belly button, maybe your shoulder. But
yeah.
that lovely turn of the palm up to the palm down realigns the shoulders and the pelvis as well as the jaw.
Oh, oh,
So
wow,
for
fascinating. Yeah.
healing for your shoulder, that's going to give you that little bit extra.
Mm,
And that also massages all the organs internally. And that
good.
then provides faster communication between the systems. Again, healing then is going to be sped up by that.
That
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
Something funny that happened when my brother and I were kind of handing over the business is he broke his thumb and I tore my rotator cuff in my shoulder. And we were kind of looking at the psychosomatics of that. And it was something about handing over and letting go of, which was really funny. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing that movement to help my shoulder. I think that's great.
So for those people that are listening to the podcast and couldn't see, that's called the Arms Only for a Donyu, which is DONYU. And on my YouTube channel, under Tai Chi Wellness, it's actually there.
Mm.
And it's the first place I start with everyone. And it's amazing how much different the shoulders, the neck, everything
I can
functions.
feel my jaw already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
After being on a plane last night. Yeah.
yeah, and everything jams up from the pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that wasn't actually what I wrote down to do today, but I wanted to share
Amazing.
that piece. So I'm just going to add this last little one because you offered so many incredible ways to think about people's careers and their life and their choices. So taking a labyrinth walk may be very helpful. And you may not have a labyrinth where you are. You could look up a labyrinth pattern if you wanted, and you could try to walk in that. You could also just walk in a circle pattern, but don't always just walk the same way, like clockwise. Go around the circle, but then change directions and go back. And you can just make the circle smaller if you want and keep walking in. But while you're doing that, if you actually bring in your senses, so you've got listening. So if you're outside and you're lucky enough to hear some birds, that's great. Smell, taste, touch, where you are, and then listening for any messages. So you talked about going inside yourself and really listening to what was
Yes.
going on. And sometimes I think we're really afraid to do that. So during the labyrinth walk, it's a nice, safe space, and just let yourself be open to whatever messages are going to come in.
Yeah. It gives yourself that your team that time to come and talk to you.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's been
Amazing.
wonderful. Michelle, I have so looked forward to this opportunity. I really appreciate you sharing a lot of things about your business and what's happened for
Yeah.
you. That's, it's not easy to always share, especially when you're making changes. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come in and share those insights. And I look forward to having you come and share your amazing insights with our High Vibe Leaders community too.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm jealous because I'd love to be on a cruise ship as the weather's changing. It's like, yeah, a hot spot would be lovely. One day it's going to happen.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I will put in the description how to contact Michelle. So if you're interested in her programs, then please take a look, and also following what she's up to, because she's an innovator. And if you're one of those people that's looking for inspiration, then Michelle Abraham is the one to follow. So we'll be looking forward to seeing where you go.
Thank you, Michelle.
So season 3, we're devoted to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. And our season has several different publications through the month. So you hear from me usually at the beginning with some of the tools that I use and the ways that I'm moving forward with them. Sometimes I have guests. And then in the middle of the month, I have interviews with people and talking about their stories and the way they've made transformation. And at the end of the month, I bring in my sister, Charlene Waynes, and she shares the journey that we've been taking with the Moyo family from Malawi and how we've been able to really connect and communicate with them and help them in their journey of rediscovery of how to build a home, how to live with the kinds of challenges that they have in Malawi. And I invite you to follow along with that storyline and stay with us. So this is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, wishing you the courage to face your transformation for the well-being of yourself and for others. Have a great day.